Hiya, today I want to talk about never blaming anyone for anything in life. And for me, it's a tall order because I spent much of my life blaming other people. And I'm sure you have too. Many of us were taught that it was always somebody else's fault. Maybe that was the example we were given. However, this is called the blame game. It's deflection. And I'd like to talk about why we do it, why it never works, how to stop blaming others, and how to take responsibility. I'm going to share with you, first of all, 5 reasons why we blame others. It's easier than taking responsibility. We're avoiding the pain of taking responsibility for our own actions. It attacks our self esteem when we feel that we have to take responsibility for something. And so, therefore, we'd much rather turn the blame towards somebody else and say, hey, that's your fault, you did it. It avoids the process of self-examination. Now we don't have to look at ourselves too closely. And would you believe there are people out there who will actually blame their parents for the way they brought them up? They'll blame friends for everything. They have parents who don't blame the children for their poor behavior, but blame the friends of the children. There's a lot of blaming goes on. I think back to the first couple in the garden. I'm going to come on to them in a minute. You know, Adam and Eve. I'm going to come on to them. Anyway, the second reason that we blame, I've got 5 reasons, is that we like the role of the victim. Society's really good with it. We're encouraged in it. Oh, you poor thing, never mind. And I get it. It's good that people feel sympathetic towards others who have been victimized in some way, but you can't play that role forever. There's a point where you have to move on. You see, if we continue with self-victimization, what will happen is that we'll have no strength, we'll have no accountability, and so therefore we're just unable to move on. We have a fake peace of mind. Everybody says, oh, there, but we're still carrying the pain, still carrying the hurt, still blaming somebody for what they did, and we're still held back and suppressed. And so it's not helpful. We have to move on from it. We also develop a lack of courage. Why? Because we're a victim. Victims are not courageous, and we're playing the victim's role. Number 3, here come the couple in the garden. We lie. We lie. Sometimes we lie to ourselves and we want to find a scapegoat for why something went wrong. It couldn't be me. In fact, wasn't it Shaggy who said, it wasn't me? You know, so people say, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. And some of them, they'll just blatantly lie. Why? Because they can't face the fact that they did something that was wrong. They can't face the fact that they're going to be people out there who are going to point the finger at them and say, you messed up. They don't want to be the topic of gossip. And you know, gossip, it ends really quickly. Everybody's going to be talked about sometime. But after a short period of time, people get bored and they move on. And some people, because they're so afraid that they could become the topic of gossip, they will just lie and say, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. However, it isn't good because it means that there are no consequences for actions. And so therefore you can't move forward and you're caught in a lie. You're just trapped there. The first couple, okay, let me just touch on that. And this just shows the fact that we're born liars, you know, and we have to fight against it. First of all, you know, you've got this man and the woman in the garden, and it wasn't their garden. It was like a rental because God had given it to them. Yeah, I have my own spin on this stuff, okay? It's the biblical narrative for me. So God had rented them some accommodation in the Garden of Eden because there were some rules. They were looking after it. They were kind of like a school caretaker. They had to behave themselves, and there were certain things they couldn't touch while they were there. But they decided to get a little bit curious. They were having a look, and then one day a serpent came along. They call him a serpent, okay, fair enough. And he tempted the woman, and then the woman later on said, when everything went pear-shaped and Daddy, who's God, came in, the woman said, it wasn't me. She said, it was that serpent that came in. He told me to try it. And I know you said that we shouldn't eat from that tree, but he said that I should because it would be better for me. And you were denying me something. Okay. She said, it wasn't my fault though. It was the serpent's. And then the man said, it wasn't my fault I ate from the tree. It was that woman you gave me. She led me to do it. I know you said we shouldn't do it, but she tempted me. She said, go on, Adam, have a bit. Just try a little bit. It tastes really nice. And so here we have the first couple even fibbing to God. And then the snake says, wasn't me. It's not my fault. You've rejected me. And so therefore this is what you've left me to do. Watch what, you know, everybody wants to blame somebody. And God, being the ultimate God in the biblical narrative, takes responsibility for the whole thing. He kind of says, what am I going to do with these people? You know, I've created these children. And he goes through this parenting phase where he says, well, look, it's those who are around them that are to blame. I need to separate my children from these other children. And then we see what happens in Sodom and Gomorrah, where he just separates his children from everybody else's children. And then he realizes that his children still can't behave very well. And even once they're separated, they still behave poorly. And so we have a situation where we have a predisposition towards being dishonest. However, don't blame others and don't tell lies, okay? Stand firm and take the consequences of your actions. And number 5, we want to know what went wrong and we can't find a solution, so we pin it onto somebody else and we want the solution to come from them. And so therefore what we do is offload the blame onto somebody else, and we say, listen, you need to sort this out, you need to resolve it, because I don't know how to bring closure here, I don't know how to resolve this, and it was your fault, you're the one who suggested we do this in the first place, so now you're going to have to sort it out. And people leave all kinds of different scenarios for that reason. They leave home, they leave workplaces, they leave businesses that they've gone into, and they say to the other person, it's your son, it's your daughter, you sort him out, you sort her out. They say, this was your business idea and it's gone pear-shaped now. Yep, I would have taken some of the profit, but there is no profit in this, it's all lost and I don't know how to sort it out. You are the expert, you resolve it, okay? Not the best way to go. I'm going to share with you some strategies that will teach you the better way to approach and go. Bear with me. There are various thoughts and feelings that lead us to blame, and we need to look at that first of all before we start moving into action, okay? Here's what we do. Now, blame is deflection, I've mentioned that. There are 2 ways that we deal with the blame game. One of them is externalizing it, and so we just simply blame everybody else. That gets really boring for other people around us. They get really fed up of listening to us constantly blaming somebody else and never taking responsibility. The other way is internalizing, where we take all the blame onto ourselves. Oh, it's me, I'm the worst person that ever lived. Look what I've done, I'm awful, oh my gosh. Nobody can tolerate being around me, I'm unworthy. You know Flanders in The Simpsons beating himself all the time. Oh God, I'm this awful person. Now, those are both extremes that are terrible, and what we want to do is find the middle ground. Because when I say never blame, I'm not saying that we mustn't apportion responsibility to somebody whose fault this is, but the 2 things we need are accountability, okay, and that's where we say, look, I recognize who is responsible for this. Ultimately, it's that person's responsibility because they did the act, and so they are accountable. And the second thing we want is a sense of responsibility towards ourselves. And so we look at, how am I going to move myself forward, because I am ultimately responsible for me. So accountability and responsibility. The first thing we need to do is to write our thoughts and feelings down. Who do we feel is ultimately to blame? We need to write that down, and we need to write what our feelings are and what our thoughts are that have led us to hold this person to be responsible. Then we need to consider, are we going to make them accountable? Do we need to take an action to make them take responsibility for what they have done? So, for example, you parked your car and somebody ploughed into you. You have to make a decision right there about accountability and responsibility. You see, processing everything is your responsibility. Accountability is to call the police and to say, hey, this is what's happened, I need a crime reference number. If we can find out who did this, maybe they've left a note, maybe somebody saw them, they need to be made accountable for their actions. However, ultimately, any action that's taken begins with you taking responsibility, because it's whose life? Your life. Next, we want to be mindful. We need to be present in the moment. And so we want to suspend judgment and consider what our coping strategies are. Yep, let the judgment go and begin to consider, how am I going to cope with where I find myself? Look at this situation that I've been faced with. How am I going to move myself on? That's really important. Thirdly, self-care. Take care of yourself. Journaling is wonderful self-care. Write about your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your journey that you're on. In addition, take care of yourself physically. Make sure that you are looking after yourself. You're exercising, you're sleeping, you're eating well, and take care of yourself emotionally. Process your emotions. Don't just bury your thoughts. This will reduce blaming behavior. You see, blaming behavior ongoingly is really harmful. We can't continue blaming people. We've got to get into action. We have to get into responsibility for ourselves. Then you want to seek some feedback from somebody close to you. Have a chat with them and say, hey, what do you think about what happened? And be open to them giving you a perspective where they say there's something you need to change. Maybe your boundaries need to change. This could lead to a change in your behavior that's going to help you to be more fruitful moving forward. This could be a positive thing. Often negative things happen, but they can have positive outcomes, okay? Then you want some self-reflection. You want to sit back, reflect and say, hey, what was my part in this? Did I leave it to go on for too long? Should I have stepped in sooner? I need to be more self-aware of myself. I need to have the right attitude, and this will give me empowerment. Lastly, I want to say, take control of your life, take responsibility, reduce blaming others, because this is your life. Bye for now.